right, we're going to take a look at this, and we'll kind of work through it together. So when we look at the cartoon, tell me, Jason, what was you and Roberta, what did y'all come up with for the interpretation of the cartoon?
People, they don't vote for the minor party.
Yeah, if you vote for the minor party, what are you doing? Yeah, so they're saying it's so it doesn't even matter, okay? A 30 doesn't even matter, okay? All right, so the next question is asking for electoral rules. What are 3 rules that we have that make it so that it's hard for third parties to win? Alice, what's one?
Winner take all.
Good, and this was like one that threw a lot of you guys, remember, on our FRQ last time? All right, so the winner-take-all feature of the Electoral College. And so if that was a real question, you'd have to define it, and then you'd have to tell me how and why it keeps a third-party candidate from winning. Can anybody do that in words? Who wants to try? Alice, you feeling brave? I can feel it. You're feeling brave.
A third party wouldn't ever really be able to get a majority of the votes because it would split a party.
Okay.
The other party would get the majority and get all of the votes.
You're headed in the right direction. Okay, third-party candidates don't get the plurality of the vote because of the lack of attention from the media, money, name recognition, something like that. Okay? All right, so if they never get the most in the state, they never get electors. So their percentage of the vote doesn't translate into getting electors. All right? What is a second reason? Who wants to share? I've been feeling it, Chris. You want to share? You want to tell us? What was the second rule you found?
Which one did you do already?
What number? We did winner take all. So what's another one?
The Electoral College, the candidate must win the popular vote and manage to get enough state support to get 270 electoral votes.
Right, and we said that it's really hard for the third-party candidate. All right, what's the one for the Congress? Who can tell me why third-party candidates? Go ahead, Alexis. Awesome.
Single-member district.
All right, single-member district. So we talked about this last time, and I know that this is hard to relate to because that's all you know. But anytime you say that we're going to divide it and we're only going to let one person from each area go to represent that area, it's hard for a third-party candidate to win for the same reason as it's hard for them to win the popular vote in a state, because they don't have the same name recognition, media, and media attention, and money. So they don't win. A proportional system fosters multiple parties in the legislature, but a single-member district system won't. And there is a third reason, and I know that this table found it, so Jacob, tell us what it is.
The public financing rules and regulations.
Good. Public financing for the presidency. Okay, so go back to that horrible day that we talked about campaign finance law. Whew, it's so complicated. If you remember, in the 70s, we created something called public financing for the presidency. But not anybody can take that. You know, if Brennan decides he wants to run for president and he's going to create the Brennan Party, there are some obstacles been put in place. And one of those rules are currently your party has to have received 5% of the popular vote in the previous presidential election for you as a candidate to even qualify for public funding in that subsequent election. So if you go back to this cartoon, Nader's big push to get 5% of it to get some popular vote is he was trying to make sure the Green Party could get public funding in 2004, and they did, because he got like 5-point-something% of that vote. And so then in 2004, whatever candidate they had, so long as they met the other requirements for public funding, then they could get that public funding. So while the major party candidates may not be using it so much anymore, it could be of real value to a third party candidate, but it's harder for them to get because they don't have the same money and the same attention. Okay? All right, and yet third parties are of value. So the next question asks you, it says that in spite of all the obstacles that we put in place, we still value our third parties. So who's got some reasons why third parties are of value? Lizzie, did y'all come up with anything?
We had like people.
Okay, well, let's hear them.
We said they create higher voter turnout, parties are more attentive, and people make meaningful choices and encourage campaign activism.
I love that. Very civic-minded, your answers. Okay, so the first one you said higher voter turnout. I think that's definitely true because it gives people who maybe are disenchanted an option. Just like there were people in 2000 that voted for Nader that would have voted for Gore, there are people that voted for Nader in 2000 that would never have voted before. I mean, you know what? Because it's like that was somebody exciting and somebody different, that they weren't like put off by that same old stale kind of candidate. Okay? What was your second reason?
Parties are more attentive.
What do you mean by that?
Like the campaigns themselves are more attentive, so they have to kind of watch out for the third party.
Ooh, I like that. When Nader ran in 2000, minimum wage was $4.25, and he talked about raising minimum wage to $8, which was probably silly in 2000. I mean, that was like a very extreme kind of perspective on minimum wage. But when he did that, that makes Gore and W have to take a position on minimum wage. So they can say those kind of more outlandish things, and the third party or the major parties have to kind of like own up, and they have to respond to things that they might otherwise ignore. Because they can say more ideologically extreme things. Brennan.
So third parties are basically like a call out. Like third parties reveal all the dark secrets of all the major parties.
They can, yeah.
For instance, like if like abortion and stuff, like obviously if they say something about abortion, then the major parties have to like come out and speak on that as well, right?
If they're able to be a force like this, you know, they can't. I mean, there are going to be third party candidates on your ballot that you're not even going to have seen a sign for, you're going to know nothing about. But if they can make enough of a national presence that they get invited to debates and people are paying attention to them, then absolutely, what you said. And that's the goal. Nader's not a dumb man. He knows he's not going to win the election. Like, he understands our election laws, but he's mad at the Democrats because he thinks that they're ignoring some of their basic principles, and so he's trying to use the election to shape public policy. He's just not planning on winning it to shape it. Okay? All right, and what was your next one?
Meaningful choices.
Yeah, it gives you some options. You know, I voted for a third-party candidate, and I'm also not stupid, and I know the person wasn't going to win, but I was so disgruntled with the two major candidates. I was just mad, and I was like, I cannot give either of these people my vote, so I'm going to vote for this. And honestly, the third-party candidate I voted for was ridiculous. But I didn't care because I said, I'm not voting for this major party candidate. So it's like a protest vote, a frustrated voter vote, or a meaningful choice because maybe it's somebody you really do like, and so you have options, not just a red or a blue. And I think you had one more?
Encourage campaign activism.
I love that because it just makes us more civic-minded and more opportunities. Good job, ladies. All right. So the last concept that we want to look at then is something called party polarization. All right? Party polarization is something that's in the news a lot. People talk about it a lot, and it's kind of like a weird disconnect. So let's look at this chart a little bit and see what we can come up with. Okay? So this is the House of Representatives, the most representative body that we have as the national government. It's the largest. There's 435 of them, elected every 2 years. So definitely an opportunity for us to hold them accountable. When we say Democratic caucus and GOP caucus, that means that there could be third-party or independent people, but it's a matter of who have they decided to join with, because they have to form a coalition or caucus with the other side. So in 1982, there are 344 out of the 435 whose votes reveal that they kind of overlap with the other party. So that means that this person was a Republican, but the votes that they issued on policy were that allied with the members of the Democratic Party, and really like pretty liberal, almost looking like a Democrat. So what's happening? It's interesting, isn't it? And if you look at the cooperation that's happened from 1982 to 2012, so back when Reagan was president, and he had a Democratic majority in the House of Representatives in 1982, look, he still had like Republicans voting with the Democrats and Democrats over here voting with the Republicans. 2012, not so much. President Obama hasn't had the same kind of Congress, probably. Alright, so we're going to watch a video clip that is going to help you to answer the last few questions. Real quickly, read over those questions about party polarization, and then the next question references a political science term called the responsible party model. And I will pull the video clip up.
So, party polarization is basically when parties begin to migrate back to their own?
Kind of. She's getting ready to tell you. You're close.
Studying political parties have a number of different things that they can consider when looking at the broad landscape of political parties. So some people might focus on more of the structure of parties. So when we think about party organizations, we can look at differences between how Democrats and Republicans organize themselves, and there's a lot of differences in how they form their committees, how they hold their conventions, how they select their delegates. We also can make comparisons across states and how their parties differ in terms of how they organize themselves. Another level outside of kind of a structure, we can look at partisanship in terms of the electorate. So how people come to identify themselves with being a Democrat and Republican. And in fact, most of the early kind of political behavior research on political parties really did try to identify how people considered themselves to be partisan and what it really meant to say, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican. Currently, much of the research that we see in terms of political parties is focusing on party polarization. And this is pretty much a buzzword that you're going to hear in the media, the extent to which our political parties are polarized. And polarization is really the extent to which people are on one side or the other side with really no middle ground, that there's not a centrist position. It's all or nothing, you're one or the other. But we can look at this at the elite level, and then we can look at it within the public. When we look at it within the elite level, we do see increasing levels of polarization. We see very few lines to vote with the other party. At the mass level, we also see polarization, and this really is the result of the elite level. Most people are thinking that it's the citizens that are creating this polarization, but it's really not. It's the elites and the media have become more polarized, and in doing so, they actually have clarified the positions, and it's allowed members of the public to also understand things to a certain extent, maybe not fully informed, but allowed them to make some choices that align them with one of the two parties, and that's creating kind of mass level polarization. This isn't to say that polarization is on every single issue. In fact, there's plenty of issues that are more valence type issues that everyone kind of wants. Everyone wants good education. But when we're talking about cultural type issues, and we're seeing this on hot button issues like gay rights and abortion, where each party has their own stances and people are joining parties or aligning with parties according to those. And it's not an environment that we're going to get away from. We're going to continue to stay in this polarized environment, which actually might not be as bad as we might think it is. In fact, in the responsible party thesis, we advocated that parties should take a responsible role and should provide clear-cut issue positions and take stands on these clear-cut issue positions so that people could join the parties and understand what they were aligning with. And while this hadn't been going on for a number of years, it's the exact type of situation that we find ourselves in. And so polarization might not be as bad as we seem to think it is, or as the media might portray it as.
Okay, so she said a lot of things, right? She gave you a definition of party polarization. Did you get that?